Welcome to Citizen University TV. I'm Eric Liu. This season on our show, we're exploring a very simple but profound question. What is civics? What do we mean by civics? Well, we define civics as the art of being a pro-social, problem-solving contributor in a self-governing community. And all those elements are important. Are you actually not antisocial and sociopathic? Are you thinking about problem solving and not just complaining about what's going on? Are you contributing and not just being on the sidelines? And are you part of a community that is capable of actually governing itself and not just being spectators? All of that is the art of civics. And in particular, today we're looking at a dimension of civics that we call community organizing. Now, we didn't invent the term, but you've probably heard the term a lot in different ways. You've probably heard about it when Barack Obama first came on the scene because he'd cut his teeth as a community organizer in the south side of Chicago. Here in Seattle this year, we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of Seattle's Black Panther Party, who are, of course, archetypal community organizers. And then right now, in the International District in Chinatown, a coalition is organizing under the hashtag Humbaos, Not Hotels, another form of classic community organizing. But to understand the idea and the work of community organizing a bit more concretely, we wanted to give it a definition here. And the definition is simply this: mobilizing people where they live to solve problems together. Now, all those pieces are important. Actually being able to bring people together in a way that's rooted in place, and again, in a way that's focused on solving problems. There are three dimensions to this work of community organizing that we want to talk about today. Number one, framing the fight. Number two, organizing with story. And then number three, making a ladder of goals. Let me kind of unpack each one of these here. So first of all, framing the fight. What do I mean by that? Well, on any issue that you might want to organize around, whether it's simply a thing about what's going on in your street and whether to have a speed bump or not, or it might be something at the scale of the city or beyond, about taxation, about affordable housing, it's always about trying to frame up what is the debate, what is the argument, what are the stakes here, and why do you want to get people to join, to step off the sidelines on your side of that fight. So right now in Seattle, there's a fight going on between, for instance, folks who want to pass what they call a progressive business tax and their opponents who want to call it a jobs tax. These folks on this side want to frame it as something for housing affordability and making this place a more affordable place to live. Folks on this side say the tax is about killing jobs and killing business and dynamism in the Seattle economy. That whole frame, depending on what side you're on, is an intentional choice about how to invite people in to the fight. So that framing is super important. The second piece then is organizing with story. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, the great community organizer Marshall Gans, who actually mentored, among others, people on the Barack Obama campaign of 2008, talks about there being three stories at the heart of community organizing: a story of self, a story of us, and a story of now. So when you're out there trying to bring people into the fold, for instance, on a given cause, whether it is transit or neighborhood development, whatever it might be, how do you tell a story about why you got involved in this, why you care, and why this matters to you, so that there's some sense of passion that can be contagious? But then moving to this idea that this is a bigger story of us, that you and I share this cause, this concern, this sense of frustration about the direction of our fill in the blank, our community, our group, our neighborhood, our place, right? That bigger story of us, that we've got a common cause. And then finally, the story that is about the fierce urgency of now. Why is this the moment that we have to actually think of ourselves as a we and organize and activate together? Being mindful of how you build narrative like this is not just about words and storytelling, it is the way in to organizing communities at every scale. Well then finally, most important, once you've done those first two pieces of framing the fight and organizing this story, it's having this ladder of goals. So you may want, if you're organizing, for instance, in Chinatown, in the International District, you may want as your overarching goal to preserve the historic and ethnic character of that community. But right now, there are probably specific fights first. There might be a particular development that you on the ground want to push back against to make sure that the longtime residents of the neighborhood get to stay there. And if you're successful in that, or maybe even if you fail in that, that builds momentum and capacity to go on to the next rung, which is to think about how do we get the city council to protect and designate areas of this neighborhood to be off limits to development. That may move you to a next step too, which is how do we bring in more folks into this community who have some respect or connection to its historic character and ethnic history. so on and so forth. Building a ladder of goals like this so that it's not just going from 0 to, I want to make this a great place. How do I actually build those steps in? That ladder of goals can also be even super tactical about, how do I first build a list of people? How do I get those people who join that list to take small actions? How do those small actions then repeat into bigger steps together? Having that sense that your first step actually leads to more is a big part of what we think of in community organizing. So just to recap, in our notion of community organizing, remember there are 3 important dimensions. In the first place, frame the fight in a way that can bring people in. Secondly, organize with story in those 3 stories we talked about of self, us, and now. And then finally, build a ladder of goals that brings you from the near term to the longer term, from the merely tactical to the more strategic. Now, let's think about and look at how this work of community organizing actually plays out in our community here in Seattle, particularly among immigrant communities. To do that, we're going to look more closely at the Somali Family Safety Task Force.